Good morning, everyone. I'm Debulina Samantha, International Relations Strategist at Enable India, and it is my privilege to welcome you to today's side event From Rights to Resilience Advancing the Purple Economy and Inclusive Civic Participation to Empower Persons with Disabilities.
We gather at a particularly significant moment. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the 10th anniversary of India's Rights of Persons with Disability Act, two important milestones that remind us of the progress achieved through collective action and the opportunities that lie ahead. Today's discussion will explore how the next phase of the CRPD implementation can be advanced through resilient care and support systems, meaningful civic and political participation, and the transformative potential of the purple economy through the lens of the collaboration between communities, markets, and policy. We will examine how governments, civil society, organization of persons with disabilities, international institutions, and the private sector can work together to create more inclusive and resilient societies. This event is organized by Enable India in partnership with G3ICT, the World Institute on Disability, the United Nations Resident Coordinator's Office in India, and the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disability, Government of India. We are grateful for the participation of distinguished leaders and partners from across sectors who have joined us for this important conversation. And now, to open today's session, I'm delighted to invite Mr. Neeraj Krishnan, the head of Purple Economy at Enable India. Neeraj Krishnan heads the Purple Economy movement, driving an economic narrative that positions persons with disabilities as customers, workers, entrepreneurs, innovators, and decision makers. He brings over 15 years of experience as a journalist and an editor across leading global and Indian media houses, including the BBC, Al Jazeera, and major national newsrooms. Today, he's working to take the purple economy from an idea to a movement, shaping conversations with governments, businesses, and institutions on how inclusion can become an economic infrastructure. Neeraj, over to you.
It's a privilege to be here at the United Nations in a room where the world comes to speak about rights, dignity, participation, and the future of persons with disabilities. For decades, the disability movement has fought rightly and powerfully for rights. The CRPD has changed the way the world thinks. It's told governments and societies that persons with disabilities are rights holders, citizens, and decision makers. But today, I want to offer the next question. After rights, what? How do rights become real in everyday life? How does a right become a right to work, a bank account opened independently, insurance that does not reject you before it understands you, a classroom, a concert, a grievance system, a business, a voice? That is where the purple economy comes in. The purple economy is an economic framework that recognizes persons with disabilities as customers, workers, entrepreneurs, innovators, suppliers, creators, and decision makers. It moves disability inclusion from the margins of welfare and compliance into the core of how markets, public systems, technology, infrastructure, and institutions are designed. At the UN, disability is often spoken through the language of rights. That language is essential, but the world also needs to learn another language, the language of value. Because rights become real only when systems create value around them. When a person with disability is seen only as a beneficiary, society asks, what support must we give? But when that same person is seen as a customer, the market asks, what must we build? When they're seen as an entrepreneur, finance asks, what must we enable? When they're seen as an innovator, technology asks, what can we learn? This is the shift the purple economy is asking the world to make. And in many ways, the purple economy has always existed. It exists in families who created solutions because no system was available. It exists in NGOs, caregivers, interpreters, educators, and so on. The task now is to recognize it, organize it, invest in it, and scale it. At Enable India, through the Purple Economy movement, we are seeing this drift happen. What started as a conversation a year and a half ago in a room very similar to this is now slowly turning into an ecosystem. We're working on purple banking, purple insurance, purple mobility, hospitality, entertainment, digital public systems, AI, assistive technology, and the idea of purple economic zones, where inclusion enters enterprise, production, skilling, infrastructure, and market access. One of the big four advisory firms is now working with us on a purple economy white paper. And that matters because when a major advisory institution begins to study this seriously, it signals that the purple economy is not a slogan. It is becoming a business, policy, and systems conversation. We've also taken this dialogue beyond India to the UAE, where we saw a powerful possibility, a country already thinking deeply about people of determination, digital government, tourism, innovation, and future-ready cities. The UAE showed us that the purple economy can speak to regions that want to build the future differently. And sometimes the movement takes other beautiful forms. When someone like Vijay Prakash, who's one of India's most beloved voices, pledged to the purple economy, it told us that it's not only about policy and markets, it's also about culture, about experiences, about joy. Because inclusion cannot stop at survival, it must reach aspiration. That is why today's theme, From Rights to Resilience, matters. Resilience is not created by asking persons with disabilities and families to keep adjusting to broken systems. Resilience is created when systems adjust, when care and support are not fragile family burdens, but organized services, when civic participation is not symbolic, but built into public systems, when businesses see persons with disabilities as customers, when governments see them as citizens shaping policy, when technology sees them as co-designers, and when markets see unmet needs as opportunities for innovation. The next phase of CRPD implementation cannot be only about whether countries have laws, but whether those laws change the design of everyday life. And economic participation is not only about employment. It's about whether persons with disabilities are recognized across the full economy as people who buy, sell, create, consume, produce, lead, decide, and dream. So today I want to leave the room with one invitation: to not think of disability inclusion as only as duty. Think of it as an unfinished economic system. If you're a government, what public system can you redesign? If you're a company, what customer journey can you change? If you're a bank, what financial barrier can you remove? If you're a technology leader, what AI system must be tested with persons with disability before it scales? The purple economy will not be built by people who simply agree with the idea, but it will be built by those who take responsibility for a system and change it. The world has spoken about rights. Now we must build the systems that make rights real. That is the purple economy, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Thank you.
As we gather at the Conference of State Parties during this landmark year for the disability rights movement, it is my great honor to welcome Ambassador Louis Gallegos, a distinguished diplomat, a global advocate for human rights, and one of the key architects of the CRPD. Ambassador Gallegos has dedicated his career to advancing inclusion and equal rights for persons with disabilities around the world. He served as Ecuador's Minister of Foreign Affairs and represented his country at the United Nations in both New York and Geneva. He also chaired the ad hoc committee that developed the CRPD and continues to champion disability inclusion globally through his leadership with G3ICT, WID, and several international institutions. Ambassador, we are very privileged to have you with us. I now invite you to deliver the remarks.
Let me begin by saying that this is a formidable team. I can't say no to Sayund. He has the extraordinary capability of reaching out. I live in Quito, Ecuador, and he lives in India. So we get to change and exchange telephone calls and emails at outrageous orders. But I also have to say that Debolina has been an extraordinary coordinator of this event. I agree with you completely. This is a very important room for me because this is the room where we would meet during the negotiations of the CRPD 20 years ago with civil society. Let me say that at the beginning, it was a very challenging issue because civil society was not unified in a position. They were contradictors amongst themselves, neutralizers in many aspects, and many of the civil society that came to this room were completely against the CRPD. It took us many years, and Fabiola is here with me, my wife, and we would spend, I don't know how many months and years we spent in breakfasts at the residence of Ecuador here, because I was ambassador to the UN, and lunches with civil society, trying to convince them on what the positions should be, explaining what the dynamics of moving 190 countries to a position. We had many contradictors amongst the countries. Besides this, the civil society meetings, we had difficult countries that were against the CRPD. Principal one was the United States, of course, but we had many others. We had many others. So this room has brings to me in my memory a lot of meetings over a sandwich and a Coke or a coffee, talking to the disability movement. We're celebrating 20 years of the convention today. Well, the 13th of December. I have to say this because I'm very proud that it's the 13th of December, because the Secretariat maneuvered that the convention would be approved by the General Assembly on the 13th of December of 2006, my birthday. If you want to have a gift, yeah. So we, after many years of work, we got the approval of the convention, and then it came into force with the ratification of Ecuador, which was the 20th country. I am extremely, extremely happy that we changed the world, because whatever people may address to you and what we have in the future are challenges, what happened in these rooms changed the society we live in the world context. 1.3 billion people have a disability. They are either born with a disability or they acquire it during their lives by accidents, by sickness, by war, like we see in our screens every day. But when you age like I am, when you're over 65, you have an 85% possibility of having a disability. You might grammatically or differ from the position of saying it's not a disability, it's a limitation. It's a disability. And by the year 2050, we will be 2 billion people aging. I won't be here, but the 2 billion people who are aging have an impact group of 2 per each, which makes it 4 billion people. So we need to change our society even more. We changed it from a medical assistive charity model into a rights-based model with this convention, but we have to come back to the ground rules of what Mirza was saying in the context of how we instrumentalize this and make it a reality. Sitting next to me here is Axel Lebois, and over there is Francis West. Let me tell you an anecdote of that, because these are primary actors here. In 2006, we were sitting in the Millennium Hotel across the street, and we decided to create G3ICT, the Global Initiative on Inclusive Technologies. Because according to Article 9, you had accessibility and you had accessibility to technology. The person who suggested in the negotiation that we include technology was a very intelligent individual who marked what the world would be with technology in our phones and in what we have today. But G3ICT has become an emblematic a group of people who are extraordinary in their capacity of changing what technology was, and we have managed to have the most important technological firms change this. Here's also people like Michael from the Zero Project, which we have in the context of this change. We have to change. We have in front of us a very big challenge. We have a regression in some of the most important countries on the issues of inclusivity. For people like me who have been working for 25 years on inclusion, it is frustrating to see that important countries are looking at inclusion as not acceptable, or DEI. That is a real challenge. The other one is a formidable border frontier of new developments. technology, what AI will do, how we can do this. And it is extremely impressive to be sitting in this room in an event that is invited by Enable India. I have to congratulate you on this because technology is coming from India at a pace that will benefit all. We need to have more South-South cooperation. We can't compete with the intensive resources of the developed world. We have to look at this from all of the angles and adapt our possibilities for the future. I talk a language different from economy. I talk the language of dignity. I talk about the need to give people with disabilities dignity, to give people who are aging dignity. And in my personal aspects, I would like to die with dignity. Where did we learn this, Fabiola and me? Fabiola and me learned this in the pandemic, where exclusion, loneliness, and desperation was common. And on a good day in New York, 1,000 people would die in homes abandoned by others. So it taught us a lesson. We need to be together as we were a civil society in this room 20 years ago to look forward and see what this convention can do, how it should change, how the committee and the general observations should manage to change the obligation of 192 states. We have to have a strategy to have the states do that, but we have to create the narrative and the capability and the conviction that civil society may guide the way. Thank you very much.
As we celebrate the 10th anniversary of India's Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, we are honored to hear from the Government of India, whose commitment to disability inclusion continues to strengthen pathways for participation, accessibility, and empowerment. We are pleased to present a special video address from Ms. Manmeet Kaur Nanda, who is the Additional Secretary of the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities of Government of India.
A very good morning to all who are presently there at COSP19. 2026 is no ordinary year for the disability rights movement. It marks 20 years since the United Nations Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the CRPD, came into existence. It marks 10 years since India enacted the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act. And it marks 10 years of the Accessible India campaign. 3 milestones, 3 pledges made, and a lot of work that has been done, but yet a lot of miles to be covered. The Department for Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities, Government of India, is committed to ensuring that persons with disabilities can access financial, educational, and other opportunities efficiently and inclusively. And in line with this commitment, DEPWD, along with its stakeholder partners, is participating in a very unique and a pilot project regarding the purple economy, the purple dots, and the unique benefit interface. This is a very pioneering step towards identifying individuals, persons with disabilities, who would require some kind of support, have aspirations for further financial, skilling, or educational requirements, and then bringing this needs-driven requirement along with another part of the ecosystem who is able to provide for this. It is a transformative shift. It is like identifying people who want things and also matching them with suppliers or providers and fulfilling those demands. For example, there may be a PWD, a person with disability, requiring a particular tuition fee. And there may be a CSR partner that can step in to give that extra coaching amount. There may be another service provider giving English speaking tutorials to help that child to participate in a competitive examination. So it is all about making the needs that are visible and actionable in a coordinative and responsive system, ensuring that every signal that is picked up is given timely and meaningful support. I believe that this is the core of the purple economy. India is a country which, as per its 2011 census, has about 26.8 million persons with disabilities. As per other surveys, that number is fairly underreported, and it could be anything between 60 million to about 100 million. These are not just numbers, but they are people who have various aspirations, dreams, and desires. But they are also people who are consumers, there are also people who are manufacturers, and also people who can positively respond and become an economic member of the Indian economy. I think the purple economy is that brings this all to the forefront. It is breaking these traditional silos. It is providing access to many opportunities. It is providing matching of the aspirations and dreams. It is deep engagement with CSR partners, with corporates, with organizations providing services. It is also bringing about a strong network of government, non government, stakeholders, partners, bringing them all together on one forum, unlocking that untapped potential, making these PWDs important partners in the Indian economy, and also expanding the market and providing an economic and commercial sense for industries, corporates, corporations, organizations to invest and take advantage of this huge potential market that probably has still remained untapped. So I hope that the discussions that you have in this very important meet will help to further align India's direction in this field. I think India has a very important role to play in terms of being a leader in the global south, take forward its entire journey of the disability movement, and also to bring forth the aspirations of many of these PWDs, and to take them along and creating a really inclusive world, an inclusive economy, and a society where each one of them contribute and are partners to the developed world that we all live in.
Now honored to hear from the United Nations system in India. Please join me in welcoming a special video address from Mr. Stefan Preissner, who is the United Nations resident coordinator in India.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues and friends. This year marks 20 years of the landmark Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. 20 years ago, the Convention changed the global conversation on disability. It shifted our focus from limitations to rights, from barriers faced by individuals to responsibilities shared by societies. That shift was transformational. Progress since then has been significant, yet the promise of the Convention remains unfinished. Today, around 1.3 billion people worldwide live with a disability. Too many continue to face barriers to opportunity, participation, and representation. As we look to the future, the question is no longer whether inclusion matters. The question is whether our institutions, economies, and societies are evolving fast enough to make inclusion a reality for all. This is why the theme of today's discussion is so important. Resilient societies are inclusive societies. They are built with people, not for people. And they recognize persons with disabilities not as beneficiaries of development, but as contributors to it. As citizens, as entrepreneurs, as innovators, and as leaders. In India, we are working with government, organizations of persons with disabilities, civil society, and the private sector to advance this vision. We are learning that when inclusion is built into systems from the outset, whether in public services, disaster preparedness, technology, or leadership development, societies become stronger for everyone. As we mark 20 years of the CRPD, let us focus on the next frontier, moving from participation to representation, from commitment to implementation, and from access to influence. The United Nations in India remains committed to working with all partners to help realize that vision. Thank you.
To continue our discussion, it is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Axel Lebloy, founder and executive director of G3ICT, a recognized global leader in digital accessibility, disability inclusion. Axel has worked extensively with governments, international organizations, businesses, and civil society to advance the implementation of the CRPD and promote accessible technologies worldwide. Through his leadership, G3ICT has become a key global platform for accelerating accessibility and inclusive innovation. Thank you for being here with us today. Over to you.
And Ambassador Gallegos, I want to thank you very much for your very kind remarks earlier. I think we would not have done G3ICT without you in the very first place. And thank you to Frances, who were there the very first day, and many pioneers here. I see Marcia Roth and Julie Brewer and Professor Michael Stein and Susan Masry, many of close friends who have been here since many years, have been instrumental in getting this whole thing to work. And fundamentally, a very important element of what has happened over the past 20 years is that progressively, following the lead of the committee that wrote the CRPD, we embarked in a situation where we had persons with disabilities, industry, and the public sector always working together, which is the key to success, as we will see today during our discussions. So I want to just very briefly today give you a sense of the incredible paradox we are living in today, and maybe share with you three observations. But I'll reduce my voice this higher. No. Is this one working? Yep. Okay. Fantastic. All right. So the paradox that I would like to underline first is that in the past 20 years, since the CRPD was actually adopted by the General Assembly, the pace of innovation and the growth of the digital world has been extraordinary. And so, for instance, we all know those numbers, but it's always nice to remember them. The day the CRPD was adopted, we had 1.1 billion users of the internet. So that was about 17% of the world population. Today, we have 6.6 billion users of the internet, and that's 73% of the world population. Our world has moved totally digital in the space of a few years. And of course, when you think about the magnitude of that wave of new technology, innovations, it's overwhelming for everybody. And it has impacted in a big way how persons with disabilities can participate in the digital economy and civil society. So that's the paradox. Yet, at the same time, we have seen extraordinary innovation being spread around the world, changing the life of persons with disabilities. We should not forget that because of the expansion of the mobile market, the expansion of the internet usage, a number of applications, services, and accessibility features that were unthinkable 20 years ago have become available to everyone. So let's not forget that. We have hundreds of millions of people who are benefiting today from those technologies every day to actually make their life easier. So I think with that, it's always like you look at the glass. Is it half empty, half full, right? So I'm more on the half full kind of attitude generally. And so my thinking is, okay, why is this not translating into real inclusion of persons with disabilities in the civic participation and the economy? And because the purpose today is to discuss the purple economy, I would like to dive into 3 things we have seen repeatedly over the past 20 years, which can be addressed and actually are working if we pay attention to it. So first, there is clearly, beyond the traditional barriers to hiring persons with disabilities and societal attitude towards persons with disabilities participation in many activities, I think there is a very, very simple problem, which is that organizations that actually are the fabric of the economy and civic society are not equipped today to provide accessible, digitally accessible interface to users. And so as a result of that, despite the extraordinary expansion of innovation around the world and the obvious facilities you have now with a mobile phone to have a zillion of different assistive solutions, you are not making progress. You don't see progress. Why is it so? Well, first of all, I would say the gap that we are witnessing is not intentional. It really is not. People really are not aware. In fact, quite often in meetings, I ask, who is using Word from Microsoft on a daily basis? And I can ask you that question, by the way. So raise your hand if you use Word as it. Okay. Now, who is aware of the Word accessibility checker? Good. And now, who uses it every time before saving a document? All right. You got the answer right here. That's what's happening in big organizations. You have sometimes a big chunk of decision makers and technical people, engineers who are not aware of disabilities. They are not even aware that solutions exist. They are not even aware that they are free. They are at their fingertips. They are there. So the issue here is essentially the lack of expertise. We recognized that about 10 years ago, there was a fantastic group of people launching the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. And we thought, you know what? That piece is missing. We need to build an accessibility profession that actually helps people make things happen at an organization level. We need people who understand disabilities, the associated barriers that exist in the digital world for different types of disabilities, what are the solutions and how can they be implemented. It's a profession. It's like an electrician or a lawyer or a plumber. You have got to know what you're doing. It's complicated. It's not easy. Anybody who tells me it's easy is like not aware of what's happening, right? I see a lot of people nodding their head. Yeah, exactly. So it's complicated. It's really complicated. So we actually embarked in that journey in becoming the mothership for the IAP. I'm here to salute Christopher Lee, Dr. Lee, who is the head of IAP since many years, and now my successor as CEO of G3 ICT. I'm very pleased to report that at this point in time, we grew from 0 persons certified in 2016, 10 years ago, to 11,400 certified professionals in 110 countries. So the conclusion of this fast expansion of the accessibility profession actually is revealing of a need in the marketplace globally to actually have true expertise in organizations to make it happen. So it really underscores, that's my first point. If we want to reach a viable purple economy, we have got to have an accessibility profession in place with competent people. You cannot achieve it otherwise. Even if technology brings myriad of new solutions and AI simplifies things, possibly not, you still have to have somebody who understands disability and the barriers that exist for persons with disabilities in different types of disabilities in the digital world. So that's the number one observation. But at the same time, I should say in our policy work over the years, you mentioned, Debolina, our work with many governments around the world. That's true. We work with, I don't know how many countries in developing policies and programs, but the issue we see is that the pace of technology innovation is really unsettling for policymakers and even people who are involved in advocacy and standard development. So why is it so? It's because, each time you see something new, you fear what's going to be the negative consequence. Sometimes there are a lot of positive consequences. We really don't know. Right now, the AI, this global anxiety in this COSP here is incredible about AI. I mean, you could see it in all sessions, you know. So people are really concerned about it. I understand it, you know.
1 minute.
Yes, 1 minute. So this is going to be the difficulty I see for the long term. I would give a lot of examples where innovation actually was feared and actually turned out to be very positive for persons with disabilities. The Danish parliament almost banned touchscreen telephone when the iPhone was launched. Fortunately, they did not do it, right? So today we have actually AI is actually feared by many people, yet you now have more than 100 languages around the world that have text-to-speech and speech recognition available, which was unthinkable a few years ago, thanks to AI and machine learning. Let's not forget the positive. So the second lesson is clear. Innovation should not be feared, but understood, embraced, and channeled. It's really a positive undertaking. And policy should encourage innovation and include persons with disabilities from the outset, while addressing the risk with creativity and openness. So this is, I think, a second pillar of the future purple economy. And finally, I would like to highlight the importance of participation. So we have been measuring around the world the level of participation of persons with disabilities in policy making for digital accessibility. This year, we did a third edition of the DARE Index, and I called our research team, and out of our 141st countries questionnaire received, today, the number of countries which are actually involving persons with disabilities in policy making for digital accessibility is 40%. So 60% do not. 5 years ago, this was 26% actually involved persons with disabilities. It had a formal process. So persons with disabilities are not involved in policy making for digital accessibility. And the paradox here is that in the private sector, you see IBM since more than a century, and I'm not from Francis West for many years, but Microsoft, Google, Meta, Amazon, all of them have engineers with disabilities, have people in their organization that actually drive the awareness of accessibility in the product development cycle. They are way ahead of government. And so when we talk about innovation and industry, let's keep in mind that today, the tech industry is a really critical partner that cannot be excluded from the discussion and should actually be looked at as an example in many ways. So this I want to say because I sense sometimes that kind of old fear about the technology industry and the fact that maybe they are not striving for persons with disabilities. So that's my third kind of pillar thing, involve the tech industry in the purple economy. That's critical because without the tech industry and without people who develop new solutions and innovate, then there is nothing happening. So always remember, public sector, policymakers, industry, persons with disabilities, all are essential. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those inspiring remarks. Now we will move on to the panel discussion, and you may all know Shayan Dev here, and he has spent nearly 2 decades advancing disability inclusion through international partnerships, assistive solutions, and systems-level change. He will now introduce our distinguished panelists and lead this discussion.
Just have certain things called out here. That is, in the panel we have 5 people, and one by one we will go to people, and we'll have 2.5 minutes per round to talk so that we can finish the thing in time. So I will start by Captain Gopal Mitra, Global Inclusion Accessibility Lead in UNICEF. And Captain Mitra, just to take it up, you have been a person who have a very nice lived experience with disability and international position of power. So there are some, what are the some missing places where institutions miss out on making things possible in a more inclusive way for disability in case of disaster management and resilience?
of all, I wish I had that much power as you say. I have. But we now know that there is enough evidence that persons with disabilities, both children and adults, are disproportionately impacted during crisis when societies, communities experience shock in terms of floods, disasters, cyclones, conflict, unrest, and so on. So when we are talking about resilience, we have to, it is essentially about how do you enhance, build the coping mechanism of persons with disabilities, children, adults, and their families. And much of the work has to be done before a disaster or a conflict or unrest happens. In order to in order to promote resilience, what it has to result in is that in case of children with disabilities, a group with which we are working with at UNICEF, we have to ensure that they are able to live with their families. They're not separated from their families. They are able to progress with their learning. They're not subjected to violence, neglect, abuse. They are able to get basic services, clean water, food, and so on. Accessibility is a big consideration. In order, and before that also, we ought to know who these children are, where they are, what are the requirements. If you don't have that data before, you can't do anything. So early screening, identification of children with disabilities is extremely important. We are talking about accessibility. If the flood hits, are there accessible shelters? Have they been mapped before? Have the accessibility been looked at before? There are severe stress on families when disasters happen. Is there adequate social protection coverage? It's a combination of all these that helps build resilience to ensure that when shocks come, I'm just giving some important ones, outline some important ones. When shocks come, that children with disabilities and their families, as well as persons with disabilities, are able to cope and live their lives with least disruption. And the last point is access to technology, including assistive technology. Technology has been discussed today, and I think that's of critical importance. We have seen around the world when emergencies happen, people with disabilities, their access to technology is reduced. A lot of assistive technology is lost. So it's a combination of all these factors that need to be addressed. But the main thing is that the work starts before the crisis hits, because once it hits, you cannot do much other than rely on what has already been done. Thank you.
On this, Sarah, I'll merge both the questions to you and put it in one go so that you can tell the things together. That is about the co-creation of any AI-related products, that how important it is to co-create nowadays, because the AI innovation is taking a full thrust to the development of the programs in digital literacy and digital power empowerment. And the second question that I have for you is that the purple economic movement, how do you think technology can give input or enhance the purple economy movement together to build the social structure by using the technology in a proper way?
So the one, so I'm thinking of the three questions that we prepared, we're talking about number 2 and number 3.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure I'm on track. I should be fine keeping within, because I'm actually native New Yorker, and so if you'll tolerate it, I can finish 2 questions in 2.5 minutes. So one, in terms of how do we make sure that people with disabilities are included as co-creators and shape the future of AI, and as co-creators. So if companies are treating people with disabilities simply as users and not co-designers in an AI-first world, the results will be continued marginalization and actually even harmful bias. AI is not free of bias. If AI models are trained on average user data, It's going to optimize for the majority of users and, again, make disability experience invisible. When models create representations of disability without collaboration of people with disabilities, they often default to harmful tropes. So my colleague Cindy Bennett, who was herself lived experience as a person who was blind, did some AI research asking for images of people with disabilities a couple of years ago, and the images that were produced were typically villainous or pathetic. And in this way, AI can reinforce insulting stereotypes. When it's deployed, AI is deployed in hiring, education, healthcare, without, and I'll quote Francis, authentic, inclusive design, it can become an automated gatekeeper. So an AI-driven video interview tool can penalize candidates with non-standard speech, non-standard facial expressions, non-standard movement styles, because it deviates from the normal average training data. So as a result, Google and all of the tech companies recognizing this, I guess I am at Google. I don't know if that was mentioned, but just FYI. And thank you for the shout out about tech companies at the forefront here. So many of the assistive technologies are created better with the input of people with disabilities, and I'll just use a couple of examples. In the Google space, mainstream gaming interfaces are generally not accessible by default, and Google created Project Game Face for people with disabilities working as co-designers. So working with a quadriplegic streamer, there's a hands-free gaming mouse controlled by head and facial movements, shaped by users' lived experience. And also desired by a community of users. Google is also building for the edges, not just the average, with natively adaptive interfaces, using AI to reconfigure interfaces in real time based on a user's needs. The interface is not fixed, adapts to the student's specific language goals and preferred communication style, for example, and letting AI create bespoke exercises that meet the student where they are. And the framework was built in collaboration with partners like the National Technical Institute for the Deaf. So it's, again, represents the disability community. So let's see, ensuring that, people with disabilities are included across all the prerequisites for AI deployment. We recognize we need diverse data and be sensitive to the potential harm if people with disabilities are not part of the deployment strategy. Obviously necessary for evaluation purposes, but ideally across all phases of the product deployment. When people with disabilities are an intrinsic part of the team, some of these potential gaps are noticed and addressed early in development rather than discovered at the end. So, I mean, the philosophy espoused by many of our companies that you're familiar with is don't build the systems for people with disabilities, but rather with people with disabilities. So that's one. The second is moving from compliance to seeing accessibility as customer access, product innovation, market expansion. So the compliance story is interesting. We recognize and value the need for the legislation that we have, Americans with Disabilities Act, European Accessibility Act, and so on, any number of legislative mandates. But somehow accessibility compliance doesn't speak to the soul. People don't focus on what we actually want to achieve, and instead they get locked on checking the box and seeing it as a burdensome box to check. I don't know the solution. Obviously, compliance legislation serves a great function. We don't want it to disappear, but we want to see it as only part of the journey. And, how do you go beyond the bare minimum? And so just brainstorming about some possible ways. How do we go from compliance to cost saving and then market expansion? So first, companies need better reporting on the size of the disability market segment. We're talking here about 1.3 billion. I don't think that you should necessarily, trust that down to the single digits here, but whatever, that's the number that we generally quote. And therefore, trillions in disposable income. So basically, it isn't a fringe group. That's key, because people will say things like, well, obviously we provide for the masses. We can't worry about an individual segment. This individual segment is the mass. And lean into the market expansion story. Advertise the inclusive nature of products. in order, for brand differentiation. Don't keep it as just like an, oh, by the way, we're also accessible. Therefore, you'll build loyalty and a growing demographic of aging users. Move accessibility metrics into a product manager's scorecard, as in your bonus is tied to the usability of this product across diverse user capabilities. Money is an amazing incentivizer. Companies need to be more aware that accessible software is often higher quality software, more intuitive, better error handling, and so on. And also the universal design aspect of products becoming more stable and adaptable. Technology designed to include people that are blind is going to also work better for a person with temporary vision loss, someone using their phone at night, and so on. If companies are concerned about the cost of inclusion, point out that a much bigger cost is the cost of retrofitting, and we've all lived that. Does the public know about the size of the population of people with disabilities? Keep sharing it. Recognize that this is a population that they ignore to their financial peril. My dear colleague, Sasha Blair Goldenson, who uses a wheelchair, points out that if a restaurant is not accessible, he won't go, and his kids won't go, and his parents don't go. So that sort of feeds into it's more than just the individual. And when we have affordable, appropriate assistive tech tools that enable people to work and earn, the market expansion story becomes clear. With increased affluence, we have increased shoppers, we have increased users of your goods and services. We have a bunch of examples of technology that was developed by people with disabilities that has then changed the world. Captioning, voice access, and voice control, all of them have a story that that's around people with disabilities and then ultimately changed the world. One of my favorites, Vint Cerf, known as one of the fathers of the internet, and he has hearing loss, his wife is deaf, and indeed he couldn't do phone calls to check in on his wife, and ultimately pushed for text messaging and electronic mail on early networks in order to communicate with his wife, and we don't need to talk about what the outcome has been then for the rest of the world. So in closing, we just have to do a better job of telling the stories. There are so many examples of technologies invented by people with disabilities that have gone fully mainstream, and people no longer even recognize that it has assistive technology origins, and they don't remember the inventor with disabilities that created it. We know that people with disabilities are natural innovators by necessity. In many cases, they invent brilliant and innovative solutions, often to solve a problem that they're experiencing, and then it ends up benefiting a large swath of the population. So many stories, the telephone, the typewriter, the internet, speech recognition, speech synthesis, all developed and were motivated by people with disabilities. Do we tell these stories enough? Perhaps not.
Thank you for your wonderful point that you made. And sorry that I am hurrying with this because we are running out of time. Thank you so much. Now I'd go to Mohammed Lutfi from GTICT, the Director of Advocacy and Capacity Building. Mohammed, again, I will merge the two questions together so that you can use a bit more time and answer the House here. So firstly, in the 20th year of CRPD, how do you see the people with disability, persons with disability, making a change in political, economic, and technological design by integrating the work together with the designers that is coming from your lived experience part? And the second question that I would take is from your side, is that the governments and the policymakers, how can they make sure that the policies on digital world are more inclusive than anything else?
CRPD, purple economy, digital inclusion, CRPD, and so on and so forth. These are very important terms that reflect a paradigm shift thanks to the CRPD itself. To me, the CRPD is not a convention that has recognized a set of rights and principles. The CRPD for the last 20 years have shifted the way we see things from a point of view of advocates, but also from the point of view of other stakeholders, mainly the private sector and professional organizations like. But this also has created or offered us the opportunity to ask governments to start think holistically when it comes to economy and move on from just thinking about sectors in silos, like education separated from employment, employment separated from economy, and so on and so forth. And ensuring that we think that we all as stakeholders think holistically, we can ensure that we start planning in a more holistic way or universal way. So when we plan for education, we think of how quality education would scale up economy for countries and for society in general. So for making sure that we do so, there is a set of strategies that governments and businesses have to, and international institutions have to take into consideration. Number one, it's very important that we budget for digital inclusion. From the beginning, we should consider that digital inclusion, and nowadays, thanks to AI, we can leverage the usage of AI to help the inclusivity of all sectors, and nobody would have the excuse that, okay, persons with disabilities cannot be part of it. So when we think of the purple economy is an opportunity to make sure that we establish the adequate infrastructure to make sure that persons with disabilities can have access to technology, can have access to education, and can have access to employment. We see different examples around the world where governments have started to take into consideration this issue. 2 years ago, G3ICT did a country study in Uzbekistan, and we see the openness of many governments for considering how to shift from just focusing on sectors on its own to connect with economy and with the labor market as well. So we should encourage governments and businesses to think more holistically when it comes to the rights of persons with disabilities, given that if we look at Article 9 on accessibility in the CRPD, accessibility is not only mentioned in Article 9. We see that there is interconnectivity between different articles of the CRPD, because accessibility does not only play a role on enhancing rights of persons with disabilities on its own, but it also lead to enhancing the inclusivity of education, employment, political participation, healthcare, and other rights. So I think governments and businesses have to start planning holistically the engagement of persons with disabilities from the first moment of planning or designing a product or service is a must. I like what Sarah said about that, and others here on the panel. And also, we need to see that governments and businesses would recognize the added value of inclusion on the economy, and to stop thinking that inclusion is a matter of favor we are doing for persons with disabilities, but also a matter of a driving factor behind economic development for societies and countries at large. So one of the things that I think we should do is to make sure that governments would start planning holistically and dedicate budgets and for such kind of planning, and also making sure that we are equipping stakeholders with the education and the capacity building that they need. Like there are many initiatives nowadays that offer such kind of opportunities of building capacity like International Association for Accessibility Professionals, with the certification programs we have and the professional education programs and courses that we offer. There's no excuse for stakeholders not to be interested and engaged with issues of digital inclusion, given the added value of digital inclusion on the economy and the growth of businesses. That's very important. The added value of digital inclusion on the economic growth of companies as a business case is very important, because we are not producing products that just to serve persons with disabilities and that's it. It's also we are producing products and services that would enhance the consumption capacity of persons with disabilities. Thus, companies would have more enlarge the scope of its customers and enhance the economy at the end of the So I think we have reached a point where nobody has the excuse to say that persons with disabilities cannot be involved. There's no excuse nowadays for neglecting persons with disabilities and their role to be represented in every single step of product development and service development. Representation is very important, and representation is not a matter of just having persons with disabilities sit in a meeting and maybe say a few words. We have, thanks to the CRPD and efforts of champion private sector companies like Google, Amazon, Meta, IBM, and others, that have created the platforms that would enable persons with disabilities to contribute to the production of services and products, and also share their input on the quality of services and products. And we need to scale this up to make sure that such kind of experiences are reflected in every sector, not only in technology, but also in education, employment, and other sectors that that concern persons with disabilities. So for me, digital inclusion becomes a kind of asset that changed lives of persons with disabilities. It's not only a matter of a leisure issue or a leisure element that we can consider and celebrate from time to time. It's a matter that we should use as a strategy, as an asset, as an overall framework for shifting the economy and change the mindset of policymakers and in different sectors. So,
Thank you so much. Now I'll come to Francis. Francis has been working for digital accessibility since her journey in IBM. Now she has formed her own way of work. And Francis, I'll again merge two questions into one. So, what do you think would make boardrooms taking up authentic inclusion into the discussion and implementation in the corporate world?
Well, thank you first for Enable's invitation. I have to say that earlier Ambassador Gales and Excel referenced that 20 years ago we were here along with Francesca at the beginning of the digital accessibility journey. And and then I will tell you what a boardroom or a ideal scenario should be. In this case, actually played out at the time when the CRPD was established. We as a company at the time, IBM, immediately went to countries like China and India and involved the research lab in those countries. So anytime we talk about research, that's about future, is about innovation. And we actually commissioned our India lab researchers to work on the next generation of technology to help people with disabilities. And they came up with this thing called spoken web. Spoken web is a way of for people who are blind, of course you cannot see, but using the speech technology to enable farmers in India to exchange or to report their crop and also pricing of the tomatoes, so they can do market transactions, market-making transactions through using spoken web. And Sarah Basson, here now working for Google, was actually our IBM representative from headquarters from my organization in charge of this project. So this is an example of what I call authentic inclusion in action. That is, today we're sitting here, we have NGOs and also we have policymakers talking about the importance of people with disability as a participant in the economy, of a purple economy. So I don't need to, share any more statistics. It's there. But the question is, how do we make it real? And this, I think it would take a two-pronged approach. The first prong is that we have to make sure that people at the top, in the boardroom, the C-suiters, really have an organic understanding of why this is good for business. This happened with IBM 115 years ago. Just to give one statistic, IBM right now is 115 years old. Microsoft is about 75 years old. And Google and all that, Microsoft is about 50 years old. Google and Meta are all about 25 years old. So I think one of the reasons IBM sustained over 100 years is because it believed that people can make a difference. So authentic inclusion, as you know, is a phrase I trademarked, and is the definition of authentic inclusion is an authentic understanding by an institution that everybody can make a difference, not in spite of, but because of their difference. So we have to find leaders at the very top, especially in the tech industry, that believes in this, and that will set the governance and policy for the rest of the business to follow. At the same time, I love Neera in your open, Raja, sorry, about we need to have people with disability, not just as a consumer, a participant and all that, but as decision makers. Decision makers meaning that you are participating in how to allocate resources or a budget in a company. But how do you get that? How do you go there? How do you become that? That ties back to Excel's comment. The reason we started the IAAP, International Association for Accessibility Professionals, because we want to, upskill the technology understanding, not just for, especially for people with disability, they need to be expert in technology. I right now work with a lot of startups because I feel like the next generation of the Google and Microsoft and IBM will come out as startup because these new CEOs, new generation, frankly, younger CEOs, they actually get it, much more so than baby boomers. I'm pointing at Excel and myself. Or, so there is absolutely hope that they will carry on the mission of uplifting the skill sets. So one of the measurement, I will end this because I know we're out of time, is that we should encourage people with disabilities take STEM curriculums, but I also would like to see them at, for example, at Harvard Business School, at MIT Sloan. I lived in Boston, so recently I've been working very hard with these, stellar, MBA programs, because that's where the future corporate CEO are coming from. So if we can have people with disability in the MBA program, and that's where you learn leadership. Oh, by the way, human leadership is absolutely needed in the age of AI, because we will all have agentic AI working for us. So you need to have management and leadership skill set. So that's how you bring authentic inclusion come into play, is at the top level, have people really organically understand and believe that you can create a market, and also at the baseline level, individually, we all should become leaders. Thank you.
Powerful. Thank you for that. And I would like to go to Gopal once more because I only asked you the first question. The second question is for you. So what happens when the situation are very stressful and the systems are under with various kind of stress while dealing with a disaster? Yeah, so in that case, how things can be managed for people with disabilities in various turbulent societies that are coming in the world because of the instability?
The what part of it, now it is the how. Uh, First of all, we need to have, see, it's already disasters, turbulent times. We really need to have a solid data and evidence. And when I say data and evidence, it's not we know 13, 14, 15% are, we got to have, okay, this is Smita. Smita is 5 years old, lives here, and this is the need. We got to have very, very solid data if we really want to ensure that children, persons with disabilities are can cope, are able to cope, are supported to cope with disasters. First of all, it is that. The second is we need to have both digital and physical accessibility that is actually implemented. Because third, we need persons with disabilities have to be part, as was mentioned before, of this co-creation. Fourth, it is we need to ensure that persons with disabilities get the support in terms of meeting basic services in terms of disasters. And that is through cash transfer, social protection. We have a lot of avenues available around the world, whether it's Myanmar or Syria or Yemen, Palestine. We have seen even when a situation becomes tough, there is a market operating, right? So with digital technology and all, it's much easier to dispense social protection programs in humanitarian crises, and that's a lifesaver. And fourth is we have to have, what we have done, for example, is to cater to humanitarian situations, we pre-position supplies. Now assistive devices, assistive technology have to be part of the pre-positioning. Last year, for example, in Myanmar, early April, late March, there was an earthquake. So we, working with partners, we were able to immediately rush about 12 metric tons of different assistive devices within a matter of days. But had we not known who the people were who needed it in that catchment area, we would not have been able to do anything with it. So it's a combination, it's a continuum of actions. There has to be simultaneous actions across all fronts. Technology is turning out to be a great enabler, but we need to have presence at the local level, organizations of persons with disabilities, local civil society organizations. They are the key to delivering and to being of support when crisis hits, when disasters hit. Thank you.
Coming to one of my mentors, Michael, the president of Zero Project. Michael, ending with you is always a pleasure because the discussions that you have are wonderfully guiding to the world. And what I would like to know from you is that while purple economy is a part that we work towards, Zero Project is already creating a big impact by organizing and giving a platform to innovations and innovators around the world. How do you think that Zero Project data can be utilized for development of the economic part of the disability sector? And the second one, it's a second question that I would throw on you, that is, what other stakeholders in this room can take a pledge for next 5 years' time for development of a systemic change in economic growth of the world disability-centric economy.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be a mentor of you. So let me start with this. And I'm answering questions that you did not ask me. It's about crisis response, but it will be very short. It's just because we have prepared a crisis response report of the Zero Project, which we actually brought with us, and my colleagues Tom and Anna sitting behind there. So they have brought some copies, and nobody leaves the room until we have shared all these copies. Yeah. But to your question, I think in times like this, we all have similar experiences with structures, international organizations struggling with a kind of desolidarization of between countries, the whole geopolitical situation, also international development funding cut in many countries, not only the US, so it's happening in many countries. And looking at this and then coming to your question, then I think there's a chance here, and especially for this community, for working closer together. There is already a fundament. I think this community of people with disabilities working closer together than other communities that work for the disadvantaged. I hate when I'm saying something where everybody nods, because then it's something very generic. So I'm giving you an example of what I'm talking about, and also where I think that that also IT and data can come in and play a role. So let's start with someone. We have Catherine Johnson in the room. She's sitting over there. She has incredible contacts to China. She's working with China for many years with her university. Cooperation means there are some needs and there are some resources. This is a resource. This is not about money. And of course, everyone thinks it's all about money. Actually, it's not. So there's a resource that I don't know how willing are you to share, but basically there's a resource here. And there is a need. Some people in this room, some people in this conference might need exactly what you want to offer. Francis, you mentioned just right now the need for STEM skills. We have an organization in the room, Perkins, who is excellent in running inclusive schools all around the world. There might or might not be a reason for you to share resources. I don't know, you don't know. But if we have better data, then we might know what is your resource, what is your resource, what is your needs. We have Dan here who runs Project Discovery. This is a 5-year-old challenge for grassroots innovation. This is an incredible resource because the winners of this get global visibility. This is a resource. There is a need for people to get this. It's not always about the money. We have G3ICT here. They have incredible resources, and they have incredible expertise in training and in certifying consultants. So there will be a lot of people around who, for them, it's the chance of their life. They would not know about this. You don't know them. Why don't you know them? We don't know enough about each other. And I could continue with Google has resources that we might not even be aware of, that you might be willing to offer or not. We don't know. No? But so I could go on. I think you know what I'm heading. If we know more about each other, and there's a chance that we know more about each other, we all can connect electronically. We have a basic fundament of working together. So there could be a chance, and also an opportunity in this situation where so many international structures are struggling. I forgot what I have to mention. We have one ambassador in the room whose biggest challenge is not to create a convention for the elderly. So there might be resources here that can also support your work. So there's a lot that we could do together if we would understand and know about each other. And this is what I would see as data. And with this, I'm closing my statement. I think you know where I'm heading. Thank you.
Intent, intention, and impression are the three things that have emerged out of this beautiful discussion. And I would like to thank Ambassador Gallegos for creating the impression in the world of disability, because leading the CRPD must have been a big challenge. And acknowledging that makes all of us understand that any difficult situation can be overcome by diplomatic price. That's a learning that we have from Ambassador Galeakos. From Axel, we have understood the impact of the starting off with collaboration, the G3ICT. And Axel has made sure that G3ICT takes a new shape to provide digital accessibility to the world. Google, my dear friend Sarah, it has been a wonderful journey for Google's accessibility work that has created immense amount of impressions in the world of digital accessibility. This is not only for one group of disability. As a person with dyslexia and a small bit of learning disability and with limited hand movement, I know how important the innovations that Google has brought is important for the disability sector as a whole. Gopal. Gopal has been a wonderful friend of mine. I disturb Gopal a lot because whenever I have to have some connections, a call or a WhatsApp message goes to Gopal, and Gopal quite kindly gives that. But today, what Gopal has brought on the table are the works of for the children, and especially for the children with disabilities, because in loss of the crisis time, what I have realized, and I propagate in my lectures in various forums, that there is no visibility of disability when any crisis happens, and there we need to interject. And Gopal, with your information, we gathered that how we can organize the proper way of moving ahead with disaster management and the work towards disabled children. Francis, with your boardroom experience and the authentic inclusion part, I can tell that this would create a new change in the world of disability, because authentic inclusion is a reality that we need to make with more inclusive boardrooms where people with disabilities are in the place of decision making in top companies, so that inclusion is not an option, is a reality. So lastly, what I would suggest is that the power of economy is a big opportunity, because the policies can be made with the power of economic growth, which has an $18 trillion economy to be raised and unplugged. And how can we do that? We can do that by making a simple pledge that we believe in purple economy, and as an individual, believing in purple economy makes all the differences, so that we can create the movement together by making a human change, which is in real is possible. Thank you. And over to Deborina.
Thank you so much, Den, and incredible panelists. As we come to close to today's session, it is my great honor to invite Dr. Sania Tarzeh, Vice President of the International Disability Alliance and the President of the World Federation of the Deafblind, to deliver the closing remarks. Dr. Tarzeh is one of the world's leading disability rights advocates and a distinguished voice for the rights of persons with disabilities, particularly persons with deafblindness, a scholar, educator, and a movement leader. She has dedicated decades to advancing accessibility, inclusion, and equal participation at national, regional, and global levels. Dr. Sania, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. First of all, I want to thank all the panelists that participated, and a special thanks to Enable India because of their great role in organizing this event. Thank you. I'm sorry that I couldn't participate from the very beginning because everything that I've heard later on is really amazing. So it's really hard to do the closing remarks after all that we've heard. But also, I want to thank some of my colleagues and friends that I know here. And some of them already know that technology is not my forte, but I am, of course, supportive of development of technology. Now as we've heard, it's 20th anniversary of the UN CRPD, and now we are entering the third decade that we don't know what it brings, but we should always refer to what we've achieved so far. I won't repeat what we've already heard here. I just wanted to give you my personal example. I was born in a deaf family, and later on I became deaf-blind. And I exist much longer than UNCRPD, and when I was born, the world was not that technologically or inclusive advanced as it is now. Deaf-blind women and girls had it even harder to get involved in schools, to communicate, to get adequate support. And today, I'm here with you participating, and I can witness so many changes. And it's not only that we are talking about technology or purple economy and inclusion of the civil society, we are also talking that if there wasn't all of us here, and if there weren't these many efforts put in the UN CRPD, we wouldn't have the big success and achievement from the last year, which is the International Day of Deaf Blindness, that was adopted by 99 countries with a consensus, which is very amazing in this geopolitical situation. So even though it was a hard path to climb, the view is beautiful from the top. So I have to admit that the changes have been made, and we are witnessing them daily, but still, that's not enough accessible for all persons with disabilities. We always forget that there is too much of people who are in disadvantage economically or geographically. And that is something that influences their life daily. They don't have the access to right technology. They don't have the access to particular services that they need in order to participate meaningfully. And that is something that we still have to work on. Purple economy and its three main pillars is amazing. I am very proud to see how it advances. And I'm very proud to see that it is done with persons with disabilities involved from the very beginning. As we've heard, it is very important that persons with disabilities are participating in high-level boards and also multinational companies. And we need to remember that many groups of persons with disabilities still remain underrepresented and invisible. That's why we need to focus on how to resolve that in the future and the following decade. And we know that economics very often depends, or mostly depends, on the political will, which is not really efficient, because that should be a constant, something measurable and efficient in our lives regardless of the political shifts. That's why we need to think about the long-term sustainability. And the second part, when we are talking about inclusion of persons with disabilities, I admit that the big change has been made, because persons with disabilities were the passive beneficiaries. Now we are somewhere in the middle. That means that we are here and we are representing, but we need to do a larger shift into not only be represented, but also be the active participants. That is still completely not quite like that. So I would like to finish up with a thought that you can always count on the International Disability Alliance and our support in regards of data collection, in regards of participation of diverse groups of persons with disabilities. And technology and accessibility is one of our main strategical goals. That's why I agree that we should all cooperate much better and that we should all do networking in a higher level. And I would like to close with a finishing sentence that says that purple economy would be efficient if we stop being passive viewers, but start being active doers within that economy. And I would like that next time when we meet, we have bigger progress here. Also, I haven't heard one mention. I haven't heard Apple being mentioned, but I can also guarantee that they are very accessible, and they actually asked deaf-blind persons themselves on how to raise their accessibility bar. So because of that, I just wanted to mention it, and I would like that us sustain our contacts, our cooperation, because I think we can do wonders in this world, and we can make it purple for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone here for being part of this important conversation. The purple economy will be built by those who move from agreement to action. Thank you all for your time today. While our formal program concludes here, we would be delighted to continue the discussion with you individually. Please feel free to approach our team right after the session. Thank you.